let's talk about abrasions. And abrasions are actually one of the things you run into, and it's scratches and all that. And, sorry it took me so long to get the rest of this video together. It's been about a year plus, but now that I'm back in my own little scuba area, we're going to discuss all kinds of little things on what to look for on vintage regulators. So here's what we call a back or top can or an inlet can, and if you see right here, you can see a lot of abrasions, and basically abrasions are just scratches, okay, but scratches down into the bare metal. And this one you can see that it's got some fairly good abrasions. Now abrasions of course can be on rubber products, on plastic bodies, basically anything that's scratched or gouged. That's what an abrasion is. And you'll see a noticeable deformation of material from being rubbed up against something abrasive. I guess we get the term abrasions from. Now let's talk about cracks. I'm lucky. I don't have a whole bunch of things that are cracked, but if you look careful on some of these older regs, okay, like this was probably a blue label, probably a 1953 reg, and of course there's a little dent there from impact trauma. But if you look around the edge, and let's see if we can see it here. You look around the edge, right there, nice crack going from the outside of the sealing lip of what we call the bottom can, or the exhale can or label can. And if you look inside, let's see if we can get it here. If you look inside, you can see that crack extends completely down to where my finger is, right there. Get in the shadow. Look at that. And that's the kind of things you look out for. And yes, if you're very astute and you're looking at things on the internet or eBay, ask for close-up pictures, okay, of the can, okay, not just hi, not this stuff. Hey, got a scuba regulator for sale. Tell them you want to see a nice close-up side pictures of the can. And if they have the ability to open the can up, fine and great. Now, one thing, okay, plastic bodies like this, I want to say about 1958 Jet Air in black phenolic plastic. This one's in really good shape. Now, phenolic's strange because it has little, like almost particles, because it was put together under a press and pressed together. It's sort of a form of bakelite. So what you might mistake are abrasions or cracks are not necessarily that. It's just the actual material. And this one's in really good shape for its age. But if you've got cracks in a plastic body, whether it's phenolic or if it's something similar to, let's take a look, like this FX right here. Okay, if you get cracks in that plastic, it can be lethal for you if you dive it. So that's one of the reasons why plastic body regulators, especially from the vintage era, are hard to find in great shape. They tend to get a lot of UV degradation, especially the Cyclec plastics back in the early 60s and later. They'll tend to get that. And of course I'm actually using the vintage double hose regulator conditioning grading guide here. You can print it off the vintage double hose website in the miscellaneous section, and it's there in the miscellaneous file. And the next thing we have, of course, is patina. Now let's take a look at what we're talking about here, and the best way to look at it is to look at this nice 1961, probably 60 or 61 era DW Mistral. If you notice, the hoses should be a bright yellow. They should be a yellow matching the color of the label. This one's in actually wonderful condition for its age. And you can actually see patina happening right here at the mouthpiece as it slowly turns brown over the years. And that's, of course, an oxidation effect, UV, things like that. Patina doesn't necessarily just have to affect the hoses. It can be on the metal as well, just from environmental factors, what it's been exposed to, how it was maintained. But for a regulator this old, with basically complete, this would be an excellent. I would give this a level 9 on the collector's guide as far as overall looks. Maybe an 8.5 or 9 if you take everything. Now, of course, it's not functional. You got to remember, we're using the regulator guide. If you're looking for it specifically for collecting and wall hangers, hey, this would be an 8.5 or 9 reg. It does have a little bit of a set in it already, but not much. And if you sit there and prepare a mount right for it to support the hose and all that, those hoses stay on. But look at that set on that thing. It definitely has been rolled up. Now this one I think actually came out of a box, out of an actual U.S. Divers box. But that's what I mean by patina. The discoloration over time and elements, and it can happen to metal as well. Now, if you look here, here's a nice non-serial number, probably about 1958. Now, Aquamaster, maybe a 59 with that hookah port, probably a 59, but it doesn't have a serial number on it. And for more of the peculiarities and particulars on a given year, you need to go ahead and look on the Vintage Double Hose website, or Scuba Board could lead you that way, but Vintage Double Hose website's got some good stuff on it. Now, this is obviously not the mouthpiece that this regulator was supposed to come with, and also this mouthpiece has been put upside down. I haven't messed with it. This is just the way it came to me, and it's pretty classic. It even has sort of a grayish patina on these hoses. This is probably a later hoses, probably maybe about 5-6 years later, and judging by the logo on the mouthpiece, on the new scientifically tested mouthpiece, they replaced the straight mouthpiece. I would say these hoses are actually from most likely the mid-60s, something they added on later, or somebody did just to put together a reg. But even this regulator has some patina. It's got some issues with chrome. There's some light verdigris on it, but not too bad. But you can tell there's sort of a patina of dirt and age on it, not just on the hoses, which have got a grayish cast to them, most likely from being in a chlorine pool and not being effectively rinsed and repeated. It might have been a training reg for all we know. Now, we get over here, and if looking at that one for patina, hey, this would be a classic example for anybody's scuba shop, or if you're a scuba enthusiast, you would go ahead and use that as a great wall hanger. But what it should look like, to get it to truly a level 9 for functionality, looks maybe 8.6 to 9 for cosmetic purposes, it should look like this. And here's one that's been totally rebuilt, basically from the same era, and it's had a few added ons. It's got the ring, which has been the ring instead of the can clamps. I hate can clamps because they're just a pain in the butt, and I don't trust them as far as a good seal. But the ring, I think you've been able to get a ring even in a U.S. diver since 57 or 58. So having a ring on there is not going to take away from its authentic look. Of course, the time this rig was built, this would be the about 1960. It would have had these kinds of clamps on it, the new and improved. It wouldn't have the Tinnerman clamps on it that some of the older rigs would have. But if you'll notice the difference in color, this is patina, this is not patinaed, okay? And it's all up to you. For, like I said, for classic collecting, hey, this is a great. I would give, just for collector purposes, as a collector piece, I'd give this about an 8.5 to 9 on the scale, even without functionality, because it's got a good A very nicely done label on it. It's not all dinged up. Doesn't have a bunch of verdigris on it. It's missing a tiny bit of chrome on its back ring, but other than that, hey, that's a great reg for a wall hanger or any scuba shop. But for functionality, it fails. Okay, that's why I give it an 8.5, because it doesn't function. It hasn't been rebuilt. It's just the way it is. It's the way it was left up probably for the last 50 years or so, 55 years. This one, same era, but rebuilt and ready to dive. I've already dove this one in the Red Sea a couple times, and I would give this, believe it or not, for total functionality as well as use, I would give this rig about an 8.8, because it does function. It's not as cosmetically pleasing maybe as the cans on the other one, because it's got a little bit of abrasions there. See, if you look at it, you'll see some scratches on the chrome, but generally it's in good shape. Now, this is a new label that I placed, and I do this for my rigs. New label, and it just says what it is, but the old label is directly underneath it. And I'll do this when the label on the old, the original label was messed up to a point. And this one actually had a sort of a messed up label on it. So I slapped this new label on it, but the old label's directly underneath it. And this one is in real good shape. There's even a little dent there on the surface to see it. So I'd give this, for overall looks and performance, I'd give this about 8.7 on the scale. Now remember, there are no such things unless you have a brand new double hose regulator from the 21st century, like the new Mistrals from 2005, 2007, still in the box. A brand new Argonaut Kraken from Vintage Double Hose, which is the only one that I know of being manufactured, or a Aqualung Mistral, the new one, which run about $1,500 and generally are restricted to military sales only. So good luck in having one of those. But those were the only ones that I would say would rank a 10, because they're totally new, totally refitted. But all for the vintage diver and the vintage collector, the best you're going to be able to do is a 9. I would give this like 8.7, in thereabouts, because cosmetically it's got a few things going on with it that could be made better. For a non-functional rig, I would give this one about 8.5. Maybe a little bit less than that. Realistic, yeah, I said about 9 maybe, fresh out of the box, but an 8.5. Non-functional though, remember that non-functionality probably drop it to really an 8. But it's up to you on how you grade it. Now, we're going to talk about how we grade a rig using the grade guide, so I'll quit confusing you with all the different numbers. Well, first you said it was a 9, and now you're saying it's an 8, and now you're saying it's a 8.5. But remember, certain things come in. Patina's still there, not a whole bunch of dry rot, but it's there. And for just collecting purposes, great. It's a wonderful rig. There have been regulators that have come fresh out, really well taken care of, that are actually better than this, believe it or not. With 50-year-old hoses, 55-year-old hoses and all that, and guess what? They would be, but they're non-functional. They have been rebuilt. I wouldn't want to dive with them. But just for general cosmetic outward appearance, this would be about an 8, really, because it doesn't function. This one would be an 8.7, just because cosmetically it's got a couple little dings on it, but it does function fully. So, you just do your numbers and you'll come up with it, and we'll see that at the end of the guide. Also, okay, we've got this rig. Okay, this is probably a mid-60s, I want to say about a 66 Aquamaster, but if you look closely, they've got some patina from chemical leaching in and around near the horns there from the rubber slowly decaying over the years, and the chrome has got a nice sort of a patina of age to it. Anything where natural rubber meets metal or other plastics, you're going to see that browning effect. And you can see it also inside the hose, and that's not dust in the hoses. That's just a natural browning and aging of oxides over the years. And there's some dust in there too, but that's actually a rubber oxide. Okay, let's talk about the last paragraph on the regulator guide here, and that's function. And function, even though when you get to level 7 on the reg guide later on, it says semi-functional. Let's clarify that point. Semi-functional means, yes, you breathe, yes, you can hook it up to a tank and it will work, but it's not breathing well. It's have a really hard breathing effort, or you can hear the duckbill valve having issues, or it might sputter, and when you breathe on it, that's semi-functional. Non-functionality kicks in on level 6 as far as the overall condition of the reg in the guide. Now here we have a 1960 50 fathom blue can regulator that has been totally rebuilt. I would give this one like an 8.9 realistically, because there's maybe a couple little cosmetic things wrong with it, tiny bit of chrome loss on keys and things like that, but this one's been totally redone and repainted. And we mean by function, of course, and we're trying to keep it within reason, the style of that era. It had plastic mouthpiece clamps, and of course I've added the extra long screws on top for ease of maintenance, and they almost all of them had a ring. Okay, but now this isn't the original ring. The original ring had metal fatigue. So did the T-nut. So I replaced it with a new stainless steel ring from Vintage Double Hose. You can't beat it. It's probably the way to go. And yes, these regs generally had a stainless steel or at least heavily chrome plated ring on them. Now full function, I'm going to go ahead and crank her up. And what I mean functional, I mean you could dive with it, and you should be able to hear it. Nice, easy breathing effort, no problems, delivers air well. This one's been down to about 80 feet here in the Red Sea. And just as a little side note, whenever you sit there and shut off your reg, just go ahead and breathe that last little bit of air out. And you're done, you're depressurized. So that's what we mean by full function. In other words, full function means you can take it, you can dive it. Now here we have what I want to say probably about a 1966-67 DA Aquamaster with the long yoke. Nice chrome, wonderful patina on it, really in fairly good shape. Cosmetically, I would give it about an 8.5. Maybe an 8.4. It does have a few little abrasion marks on it. Doesn't have a bunch of verdigris on it. Definitely has a patinaed chrome look to it from chemical distortion from the rubber. And of course the hoses are complete with a slight patina. So yeah, about an 8.2 thereabouts. But let's check function out. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and this tank's only got about 2,500 psi, and we're gonna give it some air and see what happens. Okay, high pressure seat hissing away, not a good sign. It's not holding air. Can it breathe? Can I breathe it? Okay, duckbill is collapsed in on itself. So definitely non-functional, but this one probably be very easily brought back up to full formed function with the right parts and a little bit of TLC. Non-functional, you don't want to dive with it, but if you look at it, if you take everything into account, I would give this about a 7.5. Remember, 6 is non-functional reg, you can't dive with it. 7, semi-functional, in other words, a hard breather. Well, you can't breathe with this one, it's not sealing up air on the high pressure seat, but generally I'd give this one a 7.5, maybe to 7.9 if you add everything up on it, as is. But remember, I like to rebuild regulators, so to me, automatically it's a 6 across the board until I fix it up. But not in bad shape. Hoses are still pliable, not a bunch of noticeable set to it, not bad. But that's what we would call a non-functional, but remember 6 plus 9, okay, 6 plus 9 is 15, take half of 15, You got 7.5, which is about what I said. So you got about 7.5. The reg guide here, as far as from a scale of 1 to 10, where a reg is at. Right here I've got a 2014 Argonaut Kraken. Well, they make these brand new, and they've got all kinds of DSV, shut-off valves and all that stuff you can get on the new ones. Now, I got this one in 2014, and of course it's got all the bells and whistles. And if I brought it brand new, that would be a 10 on the regulator guide scale. And they make these brand new. They're running about $550, less than $600. It's a really good buy for basically what basically is a custom-built regulator, double hose regulator. If you look at all the other equipment manufacturers out there, you can't beat it as far as a custom rig. Get it really in close to the fish. Great for spear fishing too. But for photography, it's wonderful. And of course, it's got all the bells and whistles. And yeah, I'm sort of making a little play for the Argonaut. You've got extra attachments on the back. You can put splitters on it. I've dressed this one out. You've got also a nice little second stage you can purchase from Vintage Double Hose, makers of the Kraken here. And this is the Argonaut. This one, fully functional. It's running about an IP of 135. And yeah, you can put this Sunto metric brick on there just to see. Right now we're running about 170 bar on that one, which is about 2,500 psi. But this, if it was brand new, would be a 10 on the scale. If it, right now it's a 9. I maintain it. It doesn't have a bunch of scratches, doesn't have any patina on it. It's basically a new regulator, but well maintained. But if it's brand new out of the box, we're talking manufactured probably in the last 7 to 10 years, you're still good to go. As far as my opinion is concerned, you have a new regulator, and that includes the Aqualung Mentor, which is an extremely expensive double hose regulator used primarily by the military, as well as the 2005, thereabouts 2007 Aqualung Mistral, which is basically a modern regulator they put a double hose attachment onto. I don't know about them, don't have one, don't really care to have one. This is the way to go if you want a new double hose. That said, let's move on. So this is let's say this was brand new. This would be a 10.